Hey everyone, welcome. This explainer was made by Forge College, and today we're running an interactive safety drill for smart contract emergency stops. You know, in the high-stakes world of Web3, building a smart contract is honestly a bit like engineering a high-speed automated factory. But what happens when something goes sideways? You've got to have a safe way to stop the machinery, right? So that's exactly what we're focusing on today, ensuring safe contract states during pauses. We're going to look at how to freeze your contract, and more importantly, how to mathematically prove that your pause button is an actual lifesaver and not, a self-destruct sequence. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our engineering safety manual for the day. We've got 6 inspection points to hit: the emergency stop button, testing the pause guard, admin controls while paused, testing safe recoverability, protecting your invariants, and finally, the debug report. Let's get to it. Just to give us a quick lay of the land, here's where we're at in our applied Solidity development track. In the last lesson, we were configuring network parameters, setting up the environment, all that good stuff. Right now, we're leveraging the pausable pattern. We're building those concrete pause behaviors that essentially bridge the gap between simple setups and the really complex multi-role systems we're going to tackle next when we get into access control pattern essentials. Mastering this pause behavior is absolutely a prerequisite for what's coming next. All right. Section 1, the emergency stop button. So I want you to picture your smart contract as this incredibly efficient, non-stop factory assembly line. It's churning out transactions, updating balances, moving assets, just humming along perfectly. And in a perfect world, sure, it runs forever. But when a front-end UI breaks, or market conditions go totally off the rails, or someone spots a vulnerability, you need a giant red emergency stop button. But here's the million-dollar question. What actually happens when you press pause? I mean, imagine the absolute chaos if hitting that button didn't just cleanly halt the conveyor belts, but actually caused the machinery to explode or welded all the gears together. A pause function is completely useless if it destroys the system it's supposed to protect, right? So we have to rigorously validate what the system does the literal millisecond that button is pressed. And that brings us to the difference between a good pause and a really, really bad pause. A good pause means the belt stops safely, the factory managers step onto the floor, fix the issues, and operations resume smoothly, no misbeats. On the flip side, the classic developer nightmare is the bad pause. Sure, maybe you prevented a hack, but now the contract is permanently frozen, forever. You deployed a pause button, but whoops, forgot to test if the contract could actually wake back up. So yay, the funds are safe, but they're basically stuck in amber for eternity. No way. We're going to make sure you never deploy a bad pause. Moving right along to Section 2, testing the pause guard. Now, what's really interesting about this first phase of our safety inspection is how we mathematically prove this works. We know we need a pause button. Now we map out the tests. Look at scenario A here, pause protection. The action, the contract owner calls pause, and then a regular user tries to call a state-changing function, like increment. The expected result is absolutely crucial. The transaction must revert with the exact string paused, and a paused event has to be emitted on the chain. This proves that our when-not-pause modifier is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Regular users are completely, 100%, locked out of the factory machinery the second the owner hits that red button. Next up, Section 3, admin controls while paused. Because, look, an emergency stop isn't just about freezing time, right? It's about giving yourself the actual breathing room to fix the problem. The assembly line is stopped. Regular users are safely blocked. Now the managers need to step in, run some diagnostics, and make tweaks. This is scenario B. While the contract is paused, the owner needs very specific, narrow backdoors to manually adjust the state. In this action, the owner calls something like emergency adjust 42. The expected result, the counter state actually updates to 42. But, and this is a massive but, this function has to be protected by both a when paused modifier and an owner-only modifier. You are explicitly allowing an administrative flow while everyone else is locked out. So you better believe this needs rigorous testing to make sure nobody else can sneak in and call this function. All right, on to Section 4, testing safe recoverability. So the managers fix the problem. Now comes the most nerve-wracking moment of the entire incident response, turning the machine back on. Seriously, it is so easy to build a lock that just never opens again. That's why we hammer on this specific phase of automated testing so much. Let's look at scenario C, a recoverability test. The action, the owner calls unpause, and then a regular user, who was blocked just a minute ago, calls increment again. Expected result? The counter successfully increments, and we get an unpaused event. It's kind of like the contract waking up without a hangover. Normal users can interact again. No corrupted state is lingering from the admin tweaks. The factory is officially back in business. Which brings us to Section 5, protecting your invariants.
So, how do we actually know the factory didn't, break the laws of physics while the lights were turned off? When you pause a contract, make admin tweaks, and unpause it, you are putting that system through a massive stress test. So the crucial point is understanding your invariants. An invariant is an absolute, unbreakable law of a smart contract state. It must never be corrupted, ever, even during an emergency. For example, a rule might be that a user's token balance can literally never go below zero, or the total supply can't exceed a specific hard cap. You absolutely cannot allow an emergency pause or a manual adjustment during that pause to create some weird loophole that breaks these core mathematical laws.
To guarantee those laws hold up, we designed Scenario D, the invariant check. Here, we actively try to force an invalid state mutation as a regular user across every single phase of the pause lifecycle. We hit it before the pause, during the pause, and the literal second after the unpause. The expected result is that the invariant remains completely unchanged through the entire power cycle. We are aggressively pushing the boundaries here, because if an admin adjustment accidentally creates a backdoor that lets a user bypass a core protocol rule once things unpause, this automated test is going to catch it instantly. And that brings us to our final stop, Section 6, the debug report. Okay, so what actually happens when our safety drill uncovers a vulnerability? When a test flashes red. You definitely don't just blindly start tweaking the code. You act like a professional engineer, and you write up an incident report. Having a structured workflow like this is literally what saves developers from just endlessly guessing. Step 1, isolate the failing test so you can reproduce the error deterministically. Step 2, capture the exact revert strings, the transaction traces, and the exact storage state from before and after it failed. Step 3, sit back and write out a remediation plan, basically a solid hypothesis of exactly why it broke. And finally, Step 4, implement the fix and verify it. Boom! That is your blueprint for squashing those deeply hidden state bugs. And just to give you a cheat sheet, here are the most common failures you'll probably be writing up. First, the unexpected non-revert, meaning a function actually worked when it was supposed to be blocked. If you see this, immediately check your modifier ordering to make sure when not paused is actually being applied. Or maybe you find that the state is not restored after an unpause. For that, you compare the before and after storage. Usually it just means your admin function left some machinery halfway engaged, which causes inconsistent partial updates. Once you start recognizing these patterns, debugging becomes incredibly fast. Let's zoom out and see how this builds into our next level of engineering. Up next on our timeline is access control pattern essentials. The meticulous tests and debug reports we just walked through, they are going to be absolutely critical for that. When we start adding complex role-based managers where different people have different levels of pause and unpause authority, the interactions get exponentially more complicated. Having a rock-solid foundation of validated pause states makes sure that our future access control systems won't just collapse under their own weight. All right, I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought before you jump back into your code editor. Is your contract's emergency stop a true lifesaver, or is it just a permanent freeze waiting to happen? Honestly, you only know the answer if you test it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, which was made by Forge College. If you want to dive deeper into automated testing, lock down those invariants, and really master the full spectrum of Web3 security, make sure you visit forge.college. There is a whole world of advanced learning waiting for you right there. So keep testing, keep building safely, and I will see you in the next one.